brings attention to the time and the table. And he states in the text, when the hour had come, he reclined at the table and the apostles with him. He would die tomorrow. And his final night with his boys, he reclined at the table and the apostles with him. Which he says, when you think about it, since he would die tomorrow, he says, I know we've had Passover before, but tonight's different. And that's how it ought to be. That ought to be your attitude when we come to this table. We've shouted, we've sung, we've had a good time, a whole lot of Sundays, but this Sunday, it ought to be different. And then he says that Luke says, the other translations, Matthew and Mark, say that Christ was with them. But Luke says that the apostles were with Jesus, which Luke attempts to emphasize the central role of Jesus Christ as both teacher and host. Well, what Luke is suggesting is that Christ was the center of attention. And the parallel is that we fail to recognize the difference between being with him and he being with us. And the root of this misinterpretation leads us to develop a centered Christ theology and not a Christ-centered theology. You see, we live in a day and age where Christ is not sovereign, he's our servant. And the reason why we're not as Christ-centered as we ought to be, because we want to worship Christ based on what he will do. But I'm looking for the real folk this Sunday, that if he never does anything else, my worship, my praise, and my celebration has nothing to do with what he does for me. It's who he is. Shocking us a song we used to sing. We need to go back and sing it in the church that he is Lord. Not bread when I'm hungry. Not water when I'm thirsty. Not clothes on my back. Not shoes on my feet. But he's Lord. And he has risen from the dead. And he is Lord. The other side of that song says, and every knee shall bow. And every tongue, I wish I could get some help in here, shall confess. And our problem, why some of y'all ain't felt nothing yet, because you serve a Christ that does something for your living, but he ain't your Lord. But I serve a God, if he never does anything else, he's still King of kings and Lord of lords. Can I see the folk that don't shout because you got something new? I'm looking for the real folk that worship God because he's Lord. And if he's in charge, doesn't matter what I'm going through, I'd rather have the God that is Lord of lords. You want to name it, claim it, believe it, receive it, blab it and grab it. But I need a God that if he doesn't do anything, just him being there is enough. Just knowing, mate, he'll hold you in the hollow of your hand. Just to know he is Alpha and Omega. He is the beginning and the end. He's the first and the last. He was dead. Boy, I feel like preaching here. And do you know that when you read the scripture, the only time the word was is connected with Christ is right there. He was dead. Because he's never been past tense in any other situation. But he was dead. But he is alive. I'm preaching forevermore. I serve a God that died one Friday. But early Sunday morning, got up. He is Lord. See, if he can, boy, I'm preaching. Y'all don't like this because I ain't telling you you're going to get a Benz and a house and a car. You don't need that. You need him. And when you got him, got everything you need. Heart fixer, mind regulator, joy and sorrow, hope for tomorrow. I got him. And that's enough. Be seated, and when we come to this table, now this is a sermon if you're looking for one. We ought to have a Christ-centered theology. I'm going to say 5 quick things, and then we're going to take communion. In the first place, when you come to this table, when that tray of bread is being passed by you, that tray of wine is being passed by you, it ought to say something to you about salvation. Preach, Mitchell. Because communion is a New Testament paradigm of an Old Testament blessing. Jesus instituted it during Passover. And he says in the text that communion becomes the New Testament way of celebrating Passover. Well, what was Passover? When the Lord brought the children of Israel out of Egypt, had them on their way to the promised land. Because of sin and rebellion, God sent a death angel through the camp. But the record was, if you got blood and sprinkled it on your doorpost, when the death angel got to your house, he had to pass over. And when I take communion, I'm reminded that I could have been dead, sleeping in my grave, but he let death. Somebody ought to shout right there. You should have died last night, but he let death pass over. I was covered by the blood. I don't know how you were covered. I don't know who's covering you. MedLife. I don't know who's covering you. American General. I don't know who's covering you. But I'm covered by the blood. Oh, I feel a hymn coming. There is a fountain filled with blood drawn from Emmanuel's veins, and sinners plunge beneath that flood. Lose out. Be seated. They're guilty of sin. So when that tray comes by you in a couple of minutes, y'all tell your neighbor, don't talk to me right now. Y'all tell those who are trying to be cute and funny, this ain't the time. Could have been my car. Could have been my child. Could have been my spouse. Could have been my house. But last night, it passed over. All night and all day, I got angels watching over me.